Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Shop Talk, hosted by the Triangle Area SQL Server Users Group. So, if this is your first time to Shop Talk, welcome. If this is your first time after SQL Saturday Raleigh, welcome for the first time. If you've been here quite a few times, we're glad to have you back, unless you're a certain person whose name I won't say out loud, in which case I guess you're okay to come back, but, I don't know, maybe you should take a hint. Um, By which I mean Mike. Hi, Mike. How you doing? We have Mike Christensen, the the person who made SQL Saturday Raleigh possible. So our gratefulness should all come toward Mike's direction, in spite of the joke, which was a joke. Please, Mike, don't leave. I need somebody to uh, act as. I guess I don't know if you would be the Costello or the Abbot. I'm not sure yet, but
I
one of
haven't
them.
seen that in a while.
I can't be both. So, Mike Christensen, welcome. I also have Mala. Mala, how you doing?
Good evening, everyone. Pleased to be here.
We're pleased to have you. And also, welcome, chat. Quick idea of what Shop Talk is. It's Monday evening. We're all done with work for the day, hopefully. And it's just a chance to kick back, talk about some topics. We had a SQL Saturday here for the first time in more than half of a decade. And so we're probably going to spend a lot of time talking about that. Maybe a little bit of gloating, tiny bit, like that much gloating. Maybe like that much by the time I'm done with it, but not a huge amount of gloating is what I'm trying to get at. Just like a moderate amount, just a perfectly reasonable level of gloat. In addition to that, as always, we do have a couple of topics that we're going to discuss. And the whole impetus behind Shop Talk is this is your opportunity, dear chat, to ask some questions, possibly get some answers, get some ideas. Maybe you have a technical question that one of us might have a way to point you in the right direction, or career questions, or you want to know, like, what is the fluffiest bunny, and in which case we could certainly talk about the fluff levels of bunnies. We would need to come up with a rubric by which we could measure the level of fluff, and so we'd spend some time brainstorming the idea, but we would probably come up with something. Whether that thing would be correct doesn't really matter, because it's Shop Talk. And that's really the idea of what we're getting at. It doesn't really matter because it's Shop Talk. So you're here, I'm here, they're here. Many people are here. Many people are saying it's an amazing thing. And for that reason, let's talk about something that was amazing. And that was SQL Saturday Raleigh 2025. All right. I am not going. Thank you, Mala, the top 7 fluffy rabbit breeds. So just in case, I was hoping that we would keep that in our pocket in case someone did ask about it and we could come back to it. But you know what? I'll give you credit for stepping in there. All right, but let's talk SQL Saturday Raleigh. So this was just this past weekend, and I will say I'm still a little bit worn down from the event. I slept before 10 p.m. on Saturday. It was tough, but that's because we did a whole lot of stuff. We put this thing together. We had some new technology, some new capabilities. We pushed Mike to his limits. Um,
Didn't we? Yeah.
we saw him like lift a refrigerator, just bare arming it and throwing it across a room, saying, "Oh, you want ice? I'll get you your ice." And that was all just like Thursday afternoon, and not even at the start of it. So
That was just prep.
yeah, it was full Hulk mode by my midday on Saturday. So we had Brent Ozar do his pre-con on Friday. Uh, Very well done. I had a chance to sit in probably on about half of it, although I did have a floor seat because the auditorium that we used, we filled it with people. So that was good. It turned out that the building we had this at Duke Health had 2 different conference event things going on at the same time as SQL Saturday Raleigh's pre-con. So we were moved over into a different auditorium, which was still a fine auditorium and had good seats. It was hopefully pretty comfortable for the people who had seats. But we had a lot of turnout, which was great because I'm not going to give the exact numbers for financials, but I will say really high level. in case you want to run an event. Running an event obviously costs some amount of money. Now, thankfully, Mike was able to get Duke Health for the low price of, I think he said $30,000. Um, and then I talked to people afterwards, and they didn't actually get any money. So I'm pretty sure Mike just walked off with a check for $30,000. But it happens. I give him credit. I can't fault him for that. I would do the same if I had the ability to rent out a place for $30,000. I would do it. But
And don't come to my house to try and get any, because the safe gets emptied every night. No cash.
it's a good idea. You definitely want to have that safe emptied every night. That's just good life advice. Um, Also, fear not, I am here. Thank you, Anders. We're glad that you're here. You were definitely not the person I was talking about earlier. So if you do want to run an event, a little bit of, I don't know, free advice, worth almost as much as it costs. Things are going to cost money. Duke Health graciously offered us building space for free Friday and Saturday. So that was a pretty decent in-kind contribution. Just to give you a quick idea, in prior years when we hosted this at various places, Wake Tech Northern Campus, Peace University, William Peace University, Wake Tech RTP Campus, and those places, each one of them. Hey, Mala, I think you've got some music playing. Ah, there we go. Okay, it must have been a phone. All right, so each one of those, just to give you a rough idea, would cost us about $3,000 for the day of, for Saturday, because you pay to rent the building, you pay to rent to get people working there, maintenance people, security people. You oftentimes will have to pay extra money because you have to use their catering services, et cetera, et cetera. So there's going to be some layout or outlay, depending on whether you want to say this correctly or not. So that said, if you have a venue that will host it for free, that helps a lot. I mean, that can save literally $3,000 in this case, assuming that we could find a venue. Incidentally, the main reason why we went 6 years between SQL Saturdays is, well, we couldn't find a venue. Several of the places that we looked at previously were no longer hosting, and thus we said, all right, we'll just put it off. And Mike eventually browbeat me into letting Duke Health host it. We checked out the place. It looked like it would be a good place for an event, especially of our size. And I think on the whole, it actually was. I think it was a great location, great event. The elevators, I understand, it took a little bit of time for the elevators, but thankfully there were several people who had access cards who were able to get up and down the elevators. So we tried to make that as smooth an experience as possible, and have some ideas for next year, assuming that there is a next year, which probably will be a next year. Just spoilers. Hello, Melissa. Welcome back. So basically, we had. I think the elevators would probably be the biggest pain point throughout the course of the day. But even then, hopefully that was just a minor pain, and that everything else was quite enjoyable. So, okay, more advice, less rambling. If you want to run an event, let's say you want to run a SQL Saturday somewhere else, or another conference here in the Triangle area, either way. Ideally, try to find a small enough or a large enough venue that you can have a few different rooms for relatively little money. Some of the major universities, unless you're directly affiliated with them, you might have to pay thousands or 4 to 5 digits for renting rooms. Unless you're talking about a big event where you're charging people a lot of money, that's just not a workable option. Especially, we have noticed in the SQL Saturday world that sponsorship has gone down considerably.
Hmm.
Pre 2020, you could probably expect to get for our event somewhere between $8,000 to $12,000 worth of sponsorship money, and have 7, 8 sponsors in person. I remember our SQL Saturday 2014. I think we had something like 10 sponsors in person, and we had to move them around. We had to actually put them, unfortunately, in kind of a bad location because we didn't have anywhere better to put them. So this year we had 2 sponsors in person. We had 2 other sponsors who didn't have their own special tables, and that's a lot smaller of a group. Um, as a result, we were able to put them in the atrium. We were able to put them in a very central location where everybody's passing by, which sponsors like. So good to have them kind of in that central location where you sort of have to go past them to do pretty much anything. And if but it comes at the downside that again we had 2 sponsors at the gold tier, which was what it took to get a table, and a couple of other sponsors. So we ended up pulling in probably about half the amount of money that we historically would have from sponsors. Even Anders spoke to the vendors. They did ask for restraining orders afterward, but Anders put forth the effort. And if Anders can put forth the effort, you could probably put forth the effort as well. I probably couldn't because I was Larry Zonked by the end of it, but some of you could, many of you could, many people, many such people could. So your sponsors. Um, this year, we were lucky enough. We had one of our sponsors reach out directly to us. The rest of them, we kind of had to work for, go out and get. And there will be a lot of hustle. There will be a lot of trying to reach out and, hey, would you be willing to host this event? Yvonne from Cozy Rock was awesome. Jared from C Data, Jared and Ashley at C Data were also fantastic. Ashley was not there. Jared was, and so was Robert. And Lewis from Simple Talk, Lewis Davidson, uh, great as well. And even Microsoft and AMD, the sponsorship there, that's a big thing that SQL Saturday as a whole is really doing a great job with.
Yes.
That was our entire sponsorship group. We had one blog sponsor from Red9, and that blog sponsorship is it's a small thing. It's basically a link on the website for a relatively small amount of money. But we still appreciated that because hey, that's still more money than what we otherwise would have had. So, sponsors, like I mentioned, getting sponsors is a lot harder than it historically has been. We're kind of lucky in that Cozy Rock and C Data are both local companies and that they are willing to sponsor SQL Saturday events. So we had a little bit of a heads up or a leg up there. Several body parts we had up. For what it's worth, Solomon had planned on doing the blog sponsor deal but forgot. And that is unfortunate. We could have had 2 blog sponsors, but nonetheless, it's okay. Solomon did present. Solomon had a great presentation on module signing, and I love shilling for module signing because you know what? I'm going to shill for module signing right now. You should go to Solomon's website at modulesigning.info. Let me pull up the URL. It is modulesigning.info, and you should check that out. Probably not right now because otherwise you wouldn't even understand what we're talking about at the moment, but afterwards, after Shop Talk tonight, go read modulesigning.info because if you are dealing with pretty much anything in SQL Server and you would like secure secure processes for calling code, you probably should check it out. Modulesigning.info. So you do have to update it. That's okay. Even as it is, it's still in really good condition. So yeah. All right. We talk sponsors, sort of. How to get sponsors? Don't ask me. I'm not good with that. I just sent out some emails, but more importantly, I delegated. Having been a manager for several years, I have learned the important art of having other people do work and then taking credit for it. And that's exactly what I was able to do this time around as well. So I was able to get some people to reach out and get us sponsors. And that means that's good things. It means we got really good lunch and really good breakfast and I have no idea why I ordered so much breakfast and so much coffee. In all honesty, I
Yeah,
should have.
we need to reduce the coffee next time, Kevin,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
a lot of it went waste. Yeah.
Oh, for sure. Probably about half the coffee and half the donuts. Anders needed food this week. I mean, that's fair. More donuts next year. The speaker gift will just be a dozen donuts. Here's a box of donuts. Um, Good luck getting that on your plane. So, yeah, in all honesty, I ordered way too many donuts, way too much coffee. We were literally giving away boxes of donuts by the end. But we did. We got rid of all of them. And so thank you to everybody who took home donuts, who took one for the team or 12 for the team in some cases. Uh, Lunch, however, we did not radically overorder. There were a few left over. And honestly, I'd rather have my perfect answer is we have about 4 to 5 lunches left over because that means I had just enough without anybody coming in and saying, but I ordered a lunch and I didn't get one because that's the worst feeling. So being just a few over is fine. Being 40 over, not happy. 1 under, not happy. 5 over is okay. I stuck with donuts, so there was 1. That explains why we had the salad left over, right, Anders? All right, that insult out of the way. When it comes to, let's see, what else? What other topics do we want to cover with respect to SQL Saturday? I can provide generic advice. I could talk about our amazing badge system, although I need to pull this back because my camera has a very tight range of focus. So our next time, order 1 or 2 more lunches so I could take one home. Alpaca is awesome. So Solomon, we
Mhm.
actually had several. We had like 8 left over, 7 or 8 left over, and had I thought about it at the end, we could have run over and grabbed you one. But you did get 15 to 20 donuts, so you did get plenty of donuts. I mean, that's worth it. Plus, you got this giant tub of yellow sauce, which, I mean, again, that could be a speaker gift. Speaker gift, like here's $25 worth of yellow sauce from Alpaca. I prefer the green sauce, but maybe we'll have a checkbox in the speaker submissions, like, do you prefer yellow sauce or green sauce, and not explain it at all for the people who have never been to Alpaca Peruvian rotisserie chicken charcoal based fun goodness deliciousness. Um, that's not the official name of the company, but it should be pretty close to it. But then we'll just say yellow sauce or green sauce, and then they'll come in and here's just a giant tub of yellow sauce or green sauce. Again, good luck getting that through the TSA.
Yeah,
What
Transfer
do you
them
think
to
of-
empty plastic jars. Go ahead, Mike.
I'm pro yellow sauce myself.
Mike is on team yellow sauce. Okay, I mean, it's okay. I prefer to take the road less traveled, to be a loner, Dottie, a rebel. So that's all right. But if we're looking at other advice, like I mentioned, the badges, I am going to put out probably a video and a GitHub repo with some info because historically, take us back to 2019, way back in the year 2019, we had this thing called Speed Pass, and SQL Saturday had a functionality where you had people register and you could generate passes with raffle tickets and everything. Admission tickets, raffle tickets, your little badge insert, all this stuff per person. The Speed Pass process was painful, especially if you were there on the day of and didn't have much in the way of like internet access. Then this gives you, it would at least give you the PDF form of the tickets, and people could print them out, except that like 90% of people didn't print them out. So you would be there, you'd have this long line of people who need stuff printed out the day of, and it just get really frustrating. Then SQL Saturday went away, Pass went away, SQL Saturday came back, but we don't have speed passes anymore, so we had to come up with our own. So As Solomon is asking, why were the badges so large? To be honest, my initial thought when we were building this was I want to have a a badge that's sort of like a conference badge on the cheap. Because if you've ever looked at how much money conference badges cost, it's ridiculous. It's several dollars per person, several dollars per badge. And you have to get them created days in advance. You can't just go, well, we're having a conference tomorrow, so can you get it to us by then? So we would have to pay for everybody. We don't know who's going to attend, who's not going to attend. We would have to close registrations early. This is fine for a large conference where they close registrations several days in advance. More than $2 a badge? Oh yeah, yeah. It's depending on the place you go, it can be significantly more than $2 a badge for the professional conference badges. Like you go to Past Summit and you get that plastic badge that lasts you the whole week versus the cardboard one that tears after 6 hours. Um, those can get really expensive, and it's fine if you have 5,000 people and you have 35 vendors and people are paying several $100s a week. But it's not great when you have, well, a smaller venue with not so many people, not so many sponsors, and frankly, we don't want to spend several $100s for conference badges, especially when I know 30 to 60% of people will not show up. Incidentally, we had actually about 2/3 of attendees, 2/3 of registered people did in fact show up. So 67, it was like 65, 66%. That's really good. That's pre-COVID in terms of your expected level. I think it helped that we had kind of a crummy day, but it didn't rain really hard. So it wasn't a bright sunny day. It wasn't a horrible rainy day. It was just kind of a crappy day. And does the badge price include the lanyard? Depends on where you go. Some of them, yes. Some of them, no. In a lot of places, the answer is no, that's just for the plastic. That's just to print out the plastic and get it in whatever form that you want. So anyhow, we ended up with roughly 118 people. As far as badges, my original thought was I wanted something bigger, something that would work well with uh, if the sponsors wanted to scan. So that's why we had a QR code on each badge. The QR code didn't have anything special. It just had the information, basically name, email address, company, and job title, which was information that sponsors would be able to collect. And so the thought was, oh, well, I can have them scan it if so needed. Big enough that use old eyes could see the names. Yeah, that was a part of an explicit part of the design. So going back to the badge here, I mean, even at this distance, you can probably still see my name right there. And I picked as large a font as I could get away with for first name and last name. Next year, I'm gonna probably remove the QR code altogether. We'll probably have a smaller badge, but we'll make the names as large as possible. We'll probably go landscape mode. Lanyards not included. Okay, yeah. I know that a lot of
The
places.
issue we had, Kevin, that I had and many people had was that it was so big, and the gap between the where you inserted the hook and put it on the lanyard was really small that it tore off. It came off very easily.
Yep, yep.
Yeah.
That's
So
the
that's something to watch for. Yeah.
yeah. That's because it was card stock. Yeah. So Solomon, you're right. It was card stock. I had ordered some plastic, but it was like cheap PVC. I might do that next year.
Hmm.
It might work better.
Hmm.
But basically, the lanyards we had very short teeth. I
Hmm.
reused lanyards from, it was probably a code camp in 2018 is where I originally got them, um, somewhere around there. So they've been sitting in a basement for a while or sitting in a closet for a while. We don't carry super glue. Yeah, I know.
You
How
know
dare.
though, you ever use those little round stickers that you would go put on 3-ring binder paper to make it a little bit stronger?
Yeah.
That could be another cheap solution to making it a little more durable, but it's a little tedious to do that for 100 badges.
Yeah, no, that's a potential option. A little extra strength for the ring. Grommet stickers. Ah, that's what they're called. Okay, that makes sense. I never heard of that term before, but it makes sense. So, yeah, next year plan to have still large name, still have company, get rid of the QR code, still have little SQL Saturday. One thing, oh, not called that. I just made it up. Okay, well, that's what they're called now. One thing that I think helped a lot as well. We don't have lunch tickets. What do we have? I got to pull this back because right over here would tell you if you had to pay for lunch or not. So that way somebody could easily see, hey, when it comes time to pick up lunch, did you buy your lunch or not? And I tried to be very explicit and Eventbrite. One of the rules of SQL Saturday is you must offer a free option. You cannot have only paid options. Data Saturdays allow you to have just paid, so you must buy your lunch at whatever price. SQL Saturday requires a free option. And among non speaker attendees, we had about 30% of people buy lunch. Roughly 70% of people did not buy lunch. So we needed to have a way that somebody could make sure you got a lunch if you bought it, but not if you didn't. Or if you were a speaker or a volunteer. Speakers and volunteers got comped free lunches. So that was the answer that I came up with. And the whole process behind it, like I said, I'll put together a video, but the highlight is way too much manual effort. I am working on ways to automate the hitting the Eventbrite API to pull down information on attendees because otherwise I had to just get reports. I used a word mail merge to put together the design for the badges, and then we bought a shipping label printer, a thermal printer, and that turned out to be really effective. So it was easy enough to search, find a person's name, print out the page. Originally, we were going to pre-print all of those, but when I noticed that it takes almost like 1 second, maybe a second and a half to print one, I just decided we're going to roll with it. As people come in, we'll print out, and it shouldn't slow things up too much. I did notice a few times when the line was getting a little bit longer, but it was still a lot faster moving than in prior SQL Saturdays, given that we didn't have to wait 20 to 30 seconds for the laser printer to decide it was ready to print a page again. So we had that going for us. And a good 95% of people understood what to do when handed a piece of cardboard, a lanyard, and a sticker. So 95% of people realized what to do. The other 5% of people we had to explain to them, but that was okay. It was one of the many tests that we had for SQL Saturday Raleigh, and most people passed most of them. And yeah, there were never more than a few people waiting. So that was good. I noticed the longest I think the line got was probably about 6-7 people long, and it helped at the size. We had like 120 people total. It's 118 total. So it helped that we didn't have 600 people to go through. If we did, we would have had to come up with other mechanisms to speed things up considerably. But as it was, enlisting familial labor was good enough for me. Okay. I do want to talk to, there was a question that Ben had earlier here about whether or not we'll have the venue next year. And I will say I would like to. This is ultimately going to be if Duke Health is willing to have us back. It based on my understanding of how things went, I think we acquitted ourselves well. We didn't leave a mess. It sounded like the Duke people were very happy with the event itself. And, Mike obviously can speak more to this, but I will say it doesn't seem like we burned any bridges. So that's a plus.
Um, no, not at all. They want us to use it because that's the intent of some having some of those. And so learning and supporting kind of Duke objectives. So Carolee also said, I was like, you guys are such pros. We took the garbage out. And she said, you didn't have to do that. And we are like, well, we don't, we want to leave it how we found it, not have our, very small cleaning staff have to like do 2 hours of work extra. Um, so they were really appreciative, and we put everything back. Yeah. So I think we would definitely be allowed to use it. I think that when we do more of our feedback too, like it might make sense for maybe that second auditorium from the Friday. Maybe we could use that again, but I would have to get badge access. Um, Temporary badges, and then I'm not so sure that that upstairs room is a good fit. Even if there wasn't technical problems, it's just a peculiar room, and all those computer things are in the way because the intent of that third floor room is computer training. So that room was a little weird, but people were patient and flexible with it.
Yeah, yeah. So to summarize what Mike said, because it might have been difficult hearing him, um, but yes, hopefully we'll be able to get the venue. It seems like everything worked out smoothly. Obviously, there are some things that if we do it again there at Duke Health next year, we'll try to plan knowing that, hey, here were the pain points we had this year. Here's how we can make it better next year. But all in all, I'd be happy with it again, and probably would have roughly the same 4 rooms. I didn't check to see how crowded that fourth classroom was. Um, I know that there were a couple of sessions during the day where I saw quite a few people come in to the small classroom, and I'm hoping that it didn't get too crowded over the course of the day. Unfortunately, there are only so many really good classroom sized rooms at the facility. So we went with the 4 largest that we were able to get our hands on, and um, tried to lay things out in such a way that we put people in the right places. So we didn't have an overload in any particular room. That's always the goal as a speaker, or excuse me, as an organizer. As a speaker, the goal is to have an overload, have people sitting on the floor, have the fire marshal come in and start yelling at someone. But as an organizer, we want to try to limit that. We want to try to have at least, if not the same number of people as chairs, then some approximation. So, yeah, from an attendee speaker, worked great. Okay, great. And the boardroom was our second smallest room, but it probably fits about 20 if you have people sitting along the edges and the cushions against the walls. So it's pretty neat. Training room, yeah, the training room, HDMI issues, the TV issues. I know that they happened. I didn't have a chance to get up there on Saturday, but obviously Mike was able to get up there, and that's something that we would check it next year, test everything out, make sure that we got all the AV working. The goal was for that to be as the second biggest room, to put uh, the session that we thought would have the second most people in that slot. It's not a SQL Saturday without at least one room having AV issues. You're not wrong, Anders. And especially when you put people through kind of a torture test of, we're going to slam 6 different machines with short breaks in between. Um, we're going to have a wild different variety of laptops, everything from Windows laptops that are just off the shelf to business laptops and Mac OS and Linux boxes and all kinds of weird situations. And if nothing fails, then have you really done anything? Last one they had pre-COVID in Charlotte, you had to be logged in, and no one had to log in. I think I remember that. I think that might have been where you had to do weird like Chromebook style streaming to show your stuff on screen. I remember having problems with that because I was running on Linux, and it was a major challenge. So, do not recommend. It was also a weird facility. Yeah, I mean that happens sometimes. It's just trying to find a venue. Historically Charlotte has had larger SQL Saturdays than Raleigh, and so they need larger places that can hold more people. So they have fewer
Yeah,
options
the
of.
best facilities are those that are naturally built for training, like community colleges and such. Uh, when you have it in an office, whatever issues we faced are totally common that for an event that is happening in an office space, including office spaces like Microsoft, because
Yep.
it's not meant to be a training facility. It's meant to suit the nature of an office. So all the rooms are set up to suit an office, although some may be for in-house training and such. So that's perfectly normal, and that's one reason why training facilities work really well, because they're meant for things like this, specifically meant for that. But you can't luck out with one every year. That's
Yep.
hard.
Yep.
Yeah.
And Anders, I get out of my
Yeah,
head.
I agree. Yeah, that was an exceptional space. I don't think that kind of space is common.
I was just about to make a joke about the best facilities
Yeah.
having slides in them.
Yeah.
So get out of my head, Anders. All right. So that was our brief summary of SQL Saturday Raleigh 2025. I will say from the sorry, you should be from the standpoint of organizers. Number one, I am going to try not to think about this for several more months. We finished it. I have a couple of stuff to wrap things up. I am going to have to send out an email to attendees, and there will be a little bit of wrap up activities. But after that, I want to stop thinking about it for a little while. We'll probably start thinking about it again in November, December. This is probably the first year that I've done this where by Monday after, I'm okay with running one again. Historically, it was literally months before I was willing to admit that we would do one again. So start planning. The funny thing is, assuming that we don't have anything radical happen, like that we're still able to get Duke Health next year. Assuming that that happens, I don't want to say too much, but we could probably put on the event over the course of about 3 weeks of actual effort. There'd be time. You'd have to have more time than that to get speakers and to register attendees and everything, but it
Mhm.
probably is less than 3 weeks of actual event prep for a conference of the size that we're dealing with. If you have to put on a 4,000 person conference, yeah, that's something that you have to do kind of year round. That's something that you can't just, oh, I'm going to pick this thing up in February and we're going to have it in May and everything will be great.
Oh, that kind of conference needs, I know working with the Redgate team, I know we get started like 2 weeks after summit ends for the next year. So
Yeah,
that's a totally different ballgame, that kind of conference. But what Kevin's saying is right. Like for a SQL Saturday, the actual work is during the month leading up to the event, although we have to finalize a few things beforehand. But you're not going to know how much money, how much bigger your budget is going to be. So you have to get used to that, and you can't plan a lot of things in advance. It's usually the month before the event that is a bit of work, nothing before that.
right. Sanders put on a show for 7,000 people, 130 performers in less than 4 weeks. 30 minutes after welcoming everyone, came down sick for 3 days. Thankfully, I did not get any con flu, so it's good. Uh, it was good. I mean, when you are organizing a conference of that size, yeah, there's a lot of stress involved, but we're and a full order of magnitude smaller, so there's a lot less
Yeah.
stress. There's still
Yeah.
stress. Um, there's still stress. Like the analogy that I gave to Mike this weekend was that running a conference is kind of like a duck, where the attendees are just watching the graceful duck just floating in the water. Look at how graceful and smooth it is. Meanwhile, the organizers are down there paddling furiously trying to keep above water. And from our perspective, it sounds like everything is awful. But then the attendees don't see any of that stuff. So it turns out pretty smooth. Or if they do see something, they see one thing. There could be 12 things that go wrong, but an attendee is only going to see one of them. They might have an extra 30-second delay that they don't understand why, but won't even notice it. That, oh, well, we have to scramble and find a Sharpie to write down a note because the printer's broken or whatever. I also had about 90 parking tickets, and that was just you. So that's overall the review of the event. I will send out, like I said, to everybody who attended, I'm going to send out an email tonight, try to get some feedback. There's an extra survey from Microsoft and AMD that we'll also send out, and that'll pretty much put a close on the event. But we have more stuff. We have more stuff to talk about here on Shop Talk, mostly because we have another 19 minutes to go. So, thankfully, self-adhesive hole reinforcement stickers. That sounds self-reinforcement labels. Okay, that sounds realistic, and thus I don't like it as much as grommet stickers. All right. Speaking of grommet stickers, Stack Overflow is almost dead. So this is an article, came from Mala, and I'm going to drop a link to it in chat here. Originally published in the Pragmatic Engineer newsletter. And kind of starts off with a little bit of I don't know. I don't know if I would even call that a controversial chart, but just kind of a something to get you thinking. The era of Stack Overflow really peaked about a decade ago. Hey, that was back when Google was actually returning good results. And we had a big burst in 2020 with COVID. And then you saw this drop downhill. This is number of questions asked on Stack Overflow. And you might wonder, is Stack Overflow dying? Is it dead? Is it somewhere in between? And the answer is probably yes. So especially with the launch of ChatGPT, a lot of what's happening is people, instead of asking Stack Overflow questions, are asking ChatGPT, which, let's be honest, took all the Stack Overflow questions and answers. So it's basically like asking Google to find you a Stack Overflow page where somebody had already asked and answered the question. And I guess there's some level of understanding in there. Some of this is additional moderation, additional stress on what constitutes a valid question, which is the thing that Stack Overflow has always kind of bounced back and forth on. What constitutes a valid question? No, this question is too much like this other question, therefore we're going to close it, even though it has nothing to do with this other question. But the person who closed it didn't understand. Given that the downward trend started before ChatGPT, it's hard to say it did anything more than accelerate the decline. Yeah, I would agree. I think that is a good way of putting it. And in fact, there is here we go. You can see the decline and then the steep decline. And the article here does point out that pre-ChatGPT, you do actually see that drop. Systems like Stack Overflow, should there also not be less questions every year except for new tech? I could see that. I mean, now, there are always new versions, there are always new bugs, there are always new ways of breaking things. But in a system, if you look at a thing like SQL Server on premises, where, hey, you only have a new version every 2 to 3 years, you're probably not going to have as many questions about SQL Server 2012 as you had 10 years ago when it was new. I could see this, although there are plenty of new languages, plenty of new frameworks, plenty of new libraries, things regularly and consistently changing. So then the question gets pushed to the next level of, well, then where are those people going? 20 years ago, I used to go to SQL Server Central daily. Now, can't even remember the last time I went there. Preferences change. That does happen, yeah.
Yeah, that's normal. That's SQL Server Central. The traffic has very, directly to do with what Solomon is saying about the version that comes out, and then it goes on because it's purely SQL Server. Stack Overflow is a lot more than just SQL Server. They have questions on a wide range of topics, so it is not necessarily related to the release of SQL Server, and then and things that go down after that as such. But SQL Server Central, that's been normal for years. Like if there isn't a new version and there's nothing fun going on, then there it drops for quite a while. That's how they are. That's the pattern.
Right, right. The
Yeah,
traffic plummeted as soon as Redgate bought them.
right.
No comment. Mostly because I don't know. I don't remember the traffic details.
I don't think it has to do with Redgate at all, Anders. In fact, Redgate has been extremely good with this kind of knowledge based articles, especially with Simple Talk and SQL Server Central too. Actually, the payments for articles went up considerably after Redgate bought them. If you've ever written for them before and after, you get paid really well even on SQL Server Central now compared to what it used to be. But it has to do with, yeah, the number of generally people stopped writing a lot, so that and the versions of SQL Server, a lot of things. I don't think it has to do with Redgate in particular.
Yeah.
That's my opinion, at least. Yeah.
And to Solomon's point here, June 2020,
Mhm.
questions start to decline faster than before. Even though
Mhm.
we didn't know this at the time, it was still 2 years away from ChatGPT launching. So
Right.
uh, obviously, ChatGPT was not the reason why Stack Overflow has declined.
Hmm.
Atwood and Spolsky sold out at a perfect time, though, and then ChatGPT in 2022, probably took a lot of the what I would consider the questions that would be most likely to get closed, the stuff that already had answers, already had uh, several variants, several fixes, and
Mm.
so um, that's probably a factor in this. So you have fewer questions. And in fact, the number of monthly questions is as low as when Stack Overflow launched in 2009. So you can
Mm.
see you really have the full U, the upside down U here.
Hmm.
And so the question seems to be when Stack Overflow will wind down operations or the owner sells the site, not if it will happen.
Hmm.
What I will find interesting is once a service like Stack Overflow shuts down, the large language models that were mooching off of it to answer questions will not have that source of information for additional question answering capabilities. So they'll become considerably worse, which then asks the question, what will be the next mechanism by which people will ask and answer questions? And uh, will that be another forum? Will that be a Stack Overflow like thing, or will it be something else? So for SQLServerCentral.com, I think the decline had more to do with the site relaunch using WordPress as the backend. The functionality, at least for what I do, made it harder to do stuff with non-ASCII characters, so it became too frustrating. That could be. And I think also concierge service by us old graybeards. Yeah, I was going to say for a lot of forums, the death of a forum comes when you're usually it comes in one of two ways. Number one, your graybeards age out. So your people who've been on the forum for 15 years, they retire, they move on, they're in different careers, and you don't necessarily have a lot of new people consistently filling in. A forum, a well-run forum has probably a rough count of maximum number of users who are going to be tied in with it on a consistent basis. And bringing in new people with more affinity is tough because as the forum develops, you build a level of, hey, we're all in on the same jokes. We have that camaraderie, or that we've been here together for so long. It's like an old IRC channel where you have the same people who've shown up day after day. When someone new comes in, even if you are very welcoming toward people, there's still a lot of, oh, I missed the joke. I don't understand what's going on. I don't understand the culture here. And so you're likely to go find somewhere else. And thus you see kind of ups and downs where things will come up and then they'll sort of disappear. And there have been good examples of this in the past, where you've had forums that sort of arise and just go away. All right, my thoughts exactly. No new questions and old questions or answers. Database disappears. Then where does ChatGPT learn from? Yeah, that's a great open question. And I think the other thing, I think is happening is Stack Overflow going away. Discord channels are taking over. So
So, with your permission, I want to share something, Kevin.
please do.
1 second. Let me open up what I wanted to share. Download. Where is it? Okay, here we are. Share. Okay, entire screen. Okay, to answer Melissa's question, that is a slide from Kellen Gorman's slide deck, the talk that she had at our SQL Saturday on the risks and dangers of AI. Uh, she thinks it may become unusable in the next 3 to 5 years by all those reasons that are stated below, because it just does not have anything to feed on and grow from. So if Stack Overflow is gone, we are going to see crap coming out of it, and eventually people are going to wonder, where can I go to get my answers? And that's very likely to happen. I just thought that slide was pretty awesome, and I wanted to share it.
Yeah. Um,
Yep.
I think that makes sense. So I'm going to take back control. And we're going to talk about a couple of comments here. Andrew says, but that's what you don't get via LLMs. I knew when certain people posted answers, that's when they were golden. Yeah, if Paul White gave you an answer, you knew Paul White's answer was going to be a good answer. There's some inherent trustworthiness in, this is a person who knows what he's talking about, and thus I can believe what this person is talking about. There have been other people. I don't. There are a good number of them who have shown up in Stack Overflow, Ask SQL Server Central, DBA Stack Exchange, et cetera, over the years. And okay, also, old SQL Server Central site used to update posts if the original post was updated. I loved it. The new site doesn't update. I routinely update my posts, so that meant I needed to have everything 100% as of my first attempt. I asked if the update could be added and was told that I was one of the only other people to ever update their blog post, so it wasn't worth the dev time. But overall, very sad if LLMs truly are pushing Stack Overflow out. It won't be able to answer questions on new features without people like us to post the answers that the LLMs will train on. So I think it's not LLMs. I think it's Discord. To this end, I'm thinking
What did you
about
say? You think it is what? I missed the word.
Discord channels.
Discord. Okay.
In case you're not familiar, Discord is, I joke that Discord is Slack for slackers, but
Mm-hmm.
it is similar to Slack, except that it's a competitor to Slack. It originally came about from playing video games, people who would play games,
Mm-hmm.
and it has included a lot of tech capabilities. And I agree, Anders, that Discord sucks for long-term searchability. If you want an answer right now, Discord is basically like the old IRC channels, except with more images and memes. But fundamentally, it's that same live chat experience with other people. It's not something that will have a permanent answer. It's not something where you can put together and search for it a year from now and be able to remember how this works. But for several technical communities that I'm a part of, they've really moved to Discord versus websites versus forums versus other mechanisms for communication. Um, like for example, the Open Pilot project for level 2 automated driving, and one of the spinoffs of that, Sunny Pilot. Most of their work happens in Discord. They have Git repos where people have issues and commit changes and everything, and there's communication that happens there. But most of the work is happening in that Discord chat. As far as Reddit goes, I think Reddit's going to have the same problems. Yeah, I don't have any visuals in front of me, but I'm going to guess that Reddit probably is experiencing roughly the same decline in terms of capabilities, in terms of uh, number of questions and the quality of answers. So, also, Reddit has been doing weird things like having bots automatically answer questions as though they were users, which will have some effect, I think, long term on people's willingness to uh, continue using Reddit for Q&A. And Google itself can't really be trusted anymore. So I need to pull up this link um, because here we go. This is an article from a year ago. I'm going to get back to this with another article, but this is a Substack that I like a lot. Ed Zitrone, where's your Ed at? And the man who killed Google search. I'm not going to go through the article itself, but basically what it goes through is that the guy who ran Yahoo Gemini into the ground became the marketing director over at Google, and then somehow through sort of an internal coup had taken over as head of search capabilities. And one of the things that he pushed Google toward was making sure that people had to click more next before they found good answers. Because if you click to page 4 before finding your good answer, that means you went through 4 pages of ads. Yeah, more ads. Also, you may remember Google 20 years ago. 20 years ago, Google had an advertisement or a couple of advertisements on the side, maybe one at the top. Now, if you go, it's about 50 to 60% of the page is advertisement. They technically mark these off as, oh, this is sponsored ads, but they intersperse them in with the natural search results to the point where it's hard to tell what is natural search versus paid search. And the paid ads aren't very good. The natural search has gotten considerably worse because they want you to click more. At least they still have I'm feeling lucky. Yeah, but the problem is the top result is very rarely the correct result nowadays. 10 years ago, the top result was usually the correct result. And now it's not.
Now it's all sponsored. The first dozen results are all sponsored. You have to wade through all the sponsored before you get to the real stuff underneath of it.
Yeah, and there's a lot more detail in the article here. So I recommend checking this out because this guy also has some very strong takes on the lack of revenue capabilities for large language models. That basically OpenAI is the one company actually making revenue, and they're $5 billion a year in the red. Their revenue is like 4 billion, and their costs were 9 billion, something like that. So nobody's making money in the space, and he keeps pointing this kind of stuff out. So interesting. I always started going to the 4th or the 5th answer to start. Yeah, and it's a pain because we all know that 10 years ago, Google was better. 20 years ago, Google was amazing. 20 years ago, we went from Alta Vista and Yahoo and web crawler. Google was just night and day different from all of these. And it was great for 15 years. And then Well, someone killed it. So you can check out that article. Um, one last thing that I want to point out article wise before we wrap up. Speaking of Stack Overflow, don't worry, they're fixing their problem. They're rebranding. So marketing is going to fix why your question count is down so much. We just have to. Obviously, this is just a problem of marketing. I blame Yahoo for everything. You're not wrong. In this case, the guy who screwed up Yahoo Gemini did, in fact, screw up Google. So you're not wrong, Anders. But basically, the senior vice president of community and the marketing senior vice president say that the brand identity is causing daily confusion, inconsistency, and inefficiency because, they're so tied to Stack Overflow, which are developer questions, and it alienates the wider network. My answer is not really. I mean, this is just marketing person trying to throw something out to justify a job. Yeah, new name or rebranding a piece of whatever always fixes everything. Yeah, exactly. This is the Microsoft marketing people coming in and renaming stuff because it's not working very well. So the tension between Stack Overflow and Stack Exchange. The CEO of Stack Overflow wants to shift from Q&A to Q&A community and careers, which, let's be honest, is that really what you're good at? I mean, this is we're starting to fail on one mission, so we're going to pick up additional missions in the hope that we'll get better all of a sudden. Like it doesn't work so well, and they do tie in with Indeed. I kind of I get why they're doing it, but it's not. I don't think it's going to work. Toxic people in the community. Yeah. There have been problems with Stack Overflow moderators going a little bit too harsh on things. I would say several problems have popped up in Stack Overflow, and
A lot of problems. I would say it's the problem started with they market themselves as a Q&A website where people can come in to ask questions. So if that is the nature of your business, then you cannot go after people who don't ask questions in the way you particularly like as an individual, because there'll be all kinds of people asking questions, and your job is to answer them or tell them, that, you know give them some sort of an answer. And when they started to assume the role of, we will only answer questions that are phrased a certain way, then it started to get, there were other issues too, like Kevin is saying. Not There's no need to talk about all of that, it's been a while, but the key
yeah,
issue was that is that expecting people to ask a certain way, and then you sell yourself as a Q&A site where everyone can get answers. Well, that's not true.
yeah, and from the standpoint of somebody who has primarily been an answerer of questions versus an asker of questions,
Uh-huh.
I get it. I understand why, because it's really hard when a person comes in with one line, like just a screenshot of a tiny bit of a screen and what's the what to fix,
Mm-hmm.
and then you're like, well, I don't know what this is from. You got to give me something to start with, and
Right.
seeing that over and over. But yeah, I agree. That's um,
Also, people used to, because the site is for free, people used to think they are owed an answer. That's when my early days of SQL Server Central, that's why I stopped answering, is because you don't owe anyone anything. You answer it based on your free time, and then people started to get really demanding and such over it.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and that's also another big thing that
Right.
how dare you not answer my question within 8 hours?
Right. Right.
I'm and and the idea like my thing is broken in production right now. I need you to fix it. Why are you not fixing it? I'm sorry. When did I have a service agreement with you? Um,
Right.
so there's and it's a challenge. There are a lot of challenges. It's not an easy set of answers. Stack Exchange definitely went one way in it. And, like Solomon mentions here, DBA.Stack Exchange was typically a better, friendlier community, but still some annoying people. But greatly reduced the number of answers I submitted over the past 4 years or so. Sure. And I mean, that's also a factor where a lot of people have gotten really busy, and or they've just moved on. And all right, this was fun, but now it's time for me to go do something else. And if there are new people coming in answering questions, okay, you can keep things going. You can keep a next generation alive. But the more you tie into specific people, the more a specific person leaving aff- affects the final product.
Right.
So, um, there are bad people everywhere. That is true, especially on Shop Talk. So with that, we're going to wrap things up. Anymore, I just want enough people in the data community I can reach out directly when I help. Oh, I know enough people. Yeah, and that's obviously another factor where okay, I have this problem. Ooh, I am personal friends with blah blah blah, or I once saw this guy and he didn't throw anything at me, so I'm going to email. And you can that can work as well. Sometimes it can work really well. But with that, we are going to wrap things up. We are a few minutes over. Execute SP_Anders_help. We lost SQL help with Twitter. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
um,
that was amazing. There was no rudeness, nothing there. You could, of course, you had to ask questions within the number of characters Twitter allowed, but it was enormously helpful.
yep, yep. And
Yeah.
there's nothing that's really replaced it because it turns out that social networks work best when uh, you have large numbers of people in the social network. And when you have a small social network, it doesn't matter if it's a concentrated network, you're not going to get the same level of quality. Um,
Nope.
but that's a story for another day. So, session tomorrow at Tech System. Yes, tomorrow we will be in person at Tech Systems. We are going to have Paresh Motawala who will talk to us about some really cool stuff. You can check that out at meetup.com/tripass, meetup.com/TRIPASS. So that's tomorrow. That'll be 6 p.m. It will not be online. It's in person only. Next Tuesday, we will have our advanced DBA session. Again, check that out on Meetup. That one will be online. So with that, let's wrap things up for the night. And until we see each other, maybe tomorrow, maybe at some future shop talk or another TriPass meeting, everybody, take care.
Good night, everyone.